I was first introduced to the work of Łukasz Żal when I watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things in 2020, and while I wasn't impressed by the film the first time I saw it, the visuals were nothing short of mind-blowing. So now that I've seen more of his work and have grown to love I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I wanted to take the time to break down why he's one of my favorite directors of photography working today. Between I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman and his Oscar-nominated collaborations with fellow Polish creator Paweł Pawlikowski like Cold War and Ida, a clear style emerges. All three films are shot in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and they all feature an emphasis on lower thirds framing. The films also utilize a lot of cleverly blended expressionist lighting techniques. Łukasz's visuals in those three films do a great job mixing the realism of the characters and narrative with the surrealism of the emotion lying underneath the grounded story. The three films I've previously mentioned aren't all the Polish cinematographer has worked on, though. He's also worked on equally stunning films like Dovlatov, The Hereafter, and Loving Vincent. But I'm assuming most of you aren't as familiar with those films, so I'll mostly be focusing on the three I've already mentioned: Ida, Cold War, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Unlike many other contemporary cinematographers such as Marcel Rev and Benoit Debie, Łukasz's visuals rarely contain any unmotivated camera movement, meaning the camera moving seemingly of its own accord, a la the end of The Shining. Łukasz relies on still, bordering on photography-like composition for the majority of his shots, which means that when unmotivated movement is present, it always means something. For example, almost every shot in I'm Thinking of Ending Things is stationary. It makes sense for the story given it's almost entirely imagined by a character who is at a static point in his life. Everything around him is dull and uninteresting. But when you see him gaining inspiration by watching a fictional Robert Zemeckis film, his fantasy suddenly grows in life, and thus, the next shot contains some of the few unmotivated camera movements present in the film. Those intentional movements don't always have to be as nuanced or subtle as they are in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Take this shot in Cold War. As you watch the group dance, the camera shakes in time with their movements. It's not subtle at all, but nevertheless, it helps the audience to feel the music the same way the characters do. And so while you may not agree with every action they take throughout the film, because of this shot, you've formed a subconscious bond with what they may be feeling. Łukasz also uses a deep depth of field which allows the audience to take in everyone in the scene. It's not as extreme as films by Michael Haneke or Roy Andersson, but Łukasz's visuals give the audience the choice of who they want to connect to, and by not forcing the audience into a box of staged emotion, the end result is often more emotionally resonant to the viewer, or at least it's more resonant to me. On the technical side of things, he's a big fan of clean, sharp prime lenses, like the Zeiss Ultras and Cooke 5i sets, but he's not opposed to using dirtier vintage lenses or the occasional zoom. In Cold War, when you're first watching Zula learn to dance, the camera not only pans with her movements, but it also slowly zooms in on her to build the connection between the audience and the character during this key moment. You see, Łukasz finds a lot of inspiration for his visuals in observing the characters, not only where they are and what they're doing, but how they're feeling. With a subtle shift in composition or lighting, Łukasz is able to imbue so much meaning into the simplest of interactions. In Ida, the characters are rarely framed in the center, and while some of that is most likely for the sake of beautiful environment lighting, it also helps telegraph the loneliness present in the characters without a single word having to be spoken. And it means when they are centered, something inside them has changed. But composition and movement aren't the whole picture, pun definitely intended. And in my opinion, one of the more noticeable parts of Łukasz's work is his lighting, and how he rides the perfect balance between beauty and emotion. To start, he uses large, soft lights to give the audience a clear sense of space, but once that's in there, he paints much finer with smaller, more focused lights to give shape and meaning to the people who occupy the space. The lighting in his films doesn't just show what's happening, but it's subtly altered to give the audience insight into what may be going on under the surface. And while I can examine every choice Łukasz Żal makes and what every choice means, at the end of the day, his movies just look so dang beautiful. As I mentioned earlier, I really didn't connect to I'm Thinking of Ending Things the first time I saw it, but regardless of my hesitations towards the writing and acting, I couldn't deny that the visuals were incredible. I mean, look at this shot. Look at this, even this shot. It looks amazing, and if it weren't for shots like that, I don't think I would have given the film a second chance. But boy, am I glad I did. I think as a DP, you shouldn't just focus on what's beautiful, since at the end of the day, your job is to help tell the story. But sometimes, you just want eye candy, and what I love about Łukasz Żal is that he's able to balance the two often conflicting ideas with finesse. All that to say, knowing that he's the cinematographer for Jonathan Glazer's next film, Zone of Interest, makes my silly little film nerd heart skip a beat. Thanks for watching.